Hello Ghostbuster fans, thanks so much for clicking on this video. My name is Chris. Ghostbusters Afterlife has finally hit theaters. This is a movie that a lot of Ghostbuster fans have been dying to see and had been delayed 4 times already. Now that it's finally here, it's time for us to go into full spoilers. What I'm going to do here for you guys is giving you my full spoiler review for Ghostbusters Afterlife, breaking down the ending of the movie, pointing out some of the Easter eggs you might have missed, definitely talking about the end credits and post-credits scene of Ghostbusters Afterlife, what they're referencing, what they could mean for the future. But really, I'm gonna need you ghost heads out there to also give me your opinions down below. What did you think of Ghostbusters Afterlife? Was it a movie that lived up to your expectations? Were you let down by the movie? Be as honest and truthful as you want in the comments section, because I'd be happy to hear from you guys. Alright, so in this spoiler review for Ghostbusters Afterlife, I'm gonna break it up into a couple of sections. I'll be diving into some of the Easter eggs first, then giving you my spoiler thoughts, then going into the end credits, post-credit scenes, and speculating if they could make another movie. I'll leave timestamps in the description, that way you can skip around to the part you want to hear the most. So starting off with some of the Easter eggs I caught in Ghostbusters Afterlife, man, there are actually so many Easter eggs. I'm for sure bound to miss a few of them, so be sure to also leave me the ones you guys caught down below. But some of the big major ones I was able to catch from watching the movie is right off from the opening of the film, we have Egon trying to get rid of Gozer once and for all, and is attacked in a very similar way to Sigourney Weaver when she was sitting in a chair and a bunch of demon arms were coming after her. As the movie continues on, we eventually see the Spangler family move into the dirt farmhouse left to them by Egon, where we get a couple more Easter eggs. One of them being Finn Wolfhard's character recites Revelation 6:12 from the Bible. This is the same Bible verse that the Ghostbusters used to convince the mayor that the apocalypse is imminent, as well as it also being the Bible verse that Dan Aykroyd's character has tattooed on his arm later in the movie. Once the family gets inside the house, we do see the stacking of the books vertically in a similar fashion that we saw in the first Ghostbuster movie. Along with that, we get one of our first character played by Annie Potts. She was the secretary in the first Ghostbuster movie and a love interest for Egon, which I was kind of surprised she didn't turn out to be the mother of the family. I felt like that whole section of the movie was a little weird and confusing, but oh well. I did like the return of a bunch of Ghostbuster gadgets in here. We had a PKE meter that Phoebe finds and used it to walk around the house and also, I guess, interact with her grandfather a little bit. She finds a ghost trap hidden in the floorboards, the Ecto-1 in the garage. Even more when we finally get to the secret laboratory in this farmhouse. It has a firehouse pole very similar to the pole they would find at the Ghostbuster station, along with Egon's collection of spores, molds, and funguses, something that he mentioned he collected in the first movie. Other gadgets is Logan Kim's character. Podcast later wears the same goggle headset that Ray Stan's character wore in the first Ghostbuster movie, as well as later on in the movie putting on this weird little headset that they put on Rick Moranis' character, the Keymaster, when he started acting a little crazy. And also there was a quick moment where on the shelf you could see some pink slime. I think that is in reference to the pink slime that we saw in Ghostbusters 2, which there's not a lot of Ghostbuster 2 references in this movie. Later on, when Phoebe finally goes to school and meets Paul Rudd's character, Mr. Gruberson, he's one of the teachers I wish I had in school because he decides to show the kids Cujo, a popular Stephen King horror movie, which could be a little foreshadowing and preparation for the terror dogs that the kids see later in the movie. And then, of course, you guys know I was jumping up and down when this happened. The next day, he also plays them Child's Play. That is the movie starring Chucky the Good Guy doll. Again, if we want to take a look at this as foreshadowing, this could be how those little Stay Puft marshmallows are sweet and innocent at first sight, but then quickly become something deadly. Sadly, we didn't get a Slimer appearance in here, at least not one that I saw, but I think it was very obvious that Muncher had a lot of Slimer-like qualities where he was uncontrollably wanting to eat, particularly metal. And just like in the first Ghostbuster movie, this same category of ghost is the first ghost that they went ahead and captured together. Along with also seeing murals of the Stay Puft Marshmallow brand, we of course got the little tiny adorable Stay Puft Marshmallows all throughout the movie. It's also worth pointing out that Egon's Sweet Tooth does carry over into this movie, as we see there's a wrapper of a Crunch Bar. This is a candy that Bill Murray's character gave to Egon in the first movie, and we also see a Twinkie in the glove compartment of the Ecto-1, that being one of the favorite treats of Egon. When the kids are finally arrested for busting some ghosts, Phoebe's character asks if she can make a phone call, and the police officer saying, "Who you gonna call?" in reference to the famous Ghostbuster line. She does use her one phone call to call Dan Aykroyd's character, Ray Stantz, who is still working in the same bookstore that he opened up in Ghostbuster 2, the second reference to Ghostbuster 2 we have in this movie. When the kids start seeing that the ghosts are attracted to the mine shaft in town, they put 2 and 2 together that Ivo Shandor, the man who is revealed to have built this entire town, the same man who constructed the building that Sigourney Weaver's character lived in the first Ghostbuster movie, that turned out to be a gateway for Gozer, was building the same sort of gateway in this Somerville town. That's why it's revealed to us that Egon's character was working hard in this town to stop it, where we see he set up 4 proton packs that will conveniently shoot out every time the ghosts try to escape, crossing the streams, because if you remember the first Ghostbuster movie, that was one of the ways they figured out how to defeat Gozer is by crossing the stream, something they were told not to do. And I guess since we're on the topic of Ivo Shandor, we finally have a face to put to the name, and it turns out to be none other than J.K. Simmons. This is the part that I think a lot of Ghostbuster fans will be debating amongst themselves, because having the physical body of Ivo Shandor in this tomb may contradict some things involved with the Ghostbuster video games that might make it seem like that story is non-canon, but it could be something that's easily retcon or forgiven. That way fans can have that connection and believe that the Ghostbuster video game is canon. It's just so weird that they got a great actor like J.K. Simmons to be that character only to die within seconds of Gozer reappearing, who looks identical to the way Gozer did in the first Ghostbuster movie with some nice little upgrades. And I guess speaking on that same situation of Gozer being brought back, it's all very similar to the way Gozer came into the first movie, with two terror dogs having to find a keymaster and a gatekeeper, and the mom character Carrie Coon puts on a beautiful dress the same way Sigourney Weaver's character did. And maybe I'm crazy on this one, but I'm pretty sure there was one ghost in here that had a giant eyeball that was not seen previously in movies, but was actually one of the toys that was released with Kenner back in the day of a ghost with one eyeball that would pop out, and in the movie it did the exact same thing. I thought that was a sweet little reference. And it goes without saying, the four Ghostbusters of course show back up to save the day, which I will elaborate on my thoughts in a second, but just Easter egg wise, Ray Stan's character does his thing where he demands that the ghost stop in its place like he's some sort of police officer, to then where Gozer replies a famous line asking him if he's a god, remembering his mistake last time of saying no, and then taking Winston's advice this time of saying yes. Bill Murray's character also mentions that him and Gozer could have had a very romantic relationship. If you remember, when Sigourney Weaver's character was possessed, she was very hands-on with him. Moving away from some of the Easter eggs to going into my spoiler thoughts on the movie, and like I said, if you have any other Easter eggs I missed that you want to mention, go ahead and let me know down below. Alright, so just to reiterate my thoughts on the movie, like I said, I gave it a really high score because I ended up liking the movie a lot. This movie did what it needed to for me as a Ghostbuster fan who had been dying to see another ghost movie on the big screen after being slightly disappointed with 2016's version. I'm happy that this was a continuation of the previous two movies, and even though the direction of going towards telling this story is wildly different than what you would expect from Ghostbusters, because it's mainly told from the perspective of these kids, all the nostalgic callbacks and references to me still made it feel at home and Ghostbusters to me, but like to other people out there, they hated that much nostalgia and callbacks being thrown at your face. It's that weird balance that we fall into all the time amongst fans, where some people will love those callback and references while other people will think it's just cheap nostalgia thrown at your face. It's a similar problem that a lot of fans had with Halloween 2018 when that movie came back. They thought there were too many callback and references to previous movies in the franchise instead of focusing on being its own thing. And you know what? I'm not going to completely disregard those criticisms on the movie, because I do agree there are moments in here where I feel like they could have done something really special and original, to where like, yeah, I felt sad that there wasn't a Slimer cameo or a big presence of Slimer in the movie, but I loved what they did with the Muncher character. I thought he was different enough and his own character where I was really excited seeing him, and I was actually on the edge of my seat in that whole sequence when they go to capture him. I thought that played out really smoothly, where Phoebe's character and Podcast character are just trying to mess with the proton packs, figure out how they work, and out of nowhere, they see a ghost, so they go to work, they meet Finn Wolfhard's character, they get in the Ecto-1, they chase him around, they have the little ghost trap on an RC car. Pair that in with the new feature of the Ecto-1 we didn't know about with the gunner seat, and Muncher being a character that can just shoot back all the metal that he was eating. I feel like it was really exciting and fun because it's something new in the franchise that we hadn't seen before, that although it feels slightly familiar, there was enough new stuff thrown into that sequence that I was like, this is my favorite part of the movie so far. But backing up a little bit though, I thought it was really risky the way they were handling the Egon storyline at first, because I don't know how many other Ghostbuster fans were thinking this as the movie was going on, but I was like, yo, they are calling Egon an asshole, a jerk, a good-for-nothing, a deadbeat way too many times, and I'm like, guys, he's actually dead in real life. Can you calm down with the criticisms? That I felt was something really risky that Jason Reitman did with Ghostbusters Afterlife, where for a good 70 to 80% of the movie, characters are just trashing the character of Egon, the person you kind of want to respect the most in this movie. So I was kind of taken aback every time the characters were insulting the character of Egon, but I felt like that made it so much more worth it later on in the movie, because one very powerful moment to me in this movie where I was kind of like, damn, is when the kids were arrested arrested for joyriding in the Ecto-1, and then Phoebe finally understands, oh, my grandfather wasn't a monster. He was here in town trying to stop the apocalypse, protect the world, and he sacrificed the life he had with his daughter and grandkids because of that. So then when the police officer in the movie goes ahead and insults Egon one more time, Phoebe grabs the proton gun and aims it at the cop. I was like, that is a great moment that is well earned, and I don't think I would have felt that way if they hadn't been insulting Egon so much in this movie and playing him down. And I do want to talk about that finale and how emotional it made me. But let me get into some of the things that bugged me about this movie first. Is just like, I was really rooting for this kid cast of characters to be the Ghostbusters, but at times it felt a little forced and like it wasn't working. Particularly when it came to Finn Wolfhard's character and his love interest, it really felt like that was just the movie's kind of way of forcing there to be 4 characters to put on the jumpsuits later on in the movie. And I gotta admit, whenever they actually put on the jumpsuits and go after the ghosts, it felt a little forced. It didn't feel earned, and like you knew they were just putting on these jumpsuits because that's what you expect from a Ghostbuster movie. If they're gonna go busting some ghosts, they gotta have the outfits, right? Plus, I was just constantly annoyed by how many times they were just so good with the Ghostbuster equipment when this is their first time holding on to it. Especially a character like Podcast, who, let me say, I love Podcast character. He's probably my favorite new Ghostbuster other than McKenna Grace. Dude was as hilarious as can be. I loved every line that came out of that kid's mouth. He was definitely a welcome surprise. But one thing I was getting annoyed with is like he had Ray Stance's goggles and like, how did you know that thing took a picture? How did you know which switch turned on the proton pack, kid? Or when he was controlling the RC ghost trap, he knew exactly how to control it and which button to push to make the ghost get into the ghost trap. It was just little things like that that kind of took me out of the movie, and I'm like, all right, I guess we just have to forgive it because these are kids and the movie wants to make them honorary Ghostbusters. Fine. I was also kind of sad that the original Ghostbusters didn't get all that much screen time in the movie. I actually would have loved a little bit more backstory into what exactly they were doing when all we really get is kind of that phone call that Phoebe has with Ray's character where he kind of gives a rundown to what they've been doing. And that just felt like an exposition dump where I would have more rather have seen that kind of go down or show us where each one of the Ghostbusters are instead of just it being told through a quick phone call. But those were just some of my nitpicks of things that rubbed me the wrong way about this movie. Getting on to definitely that finale and everything going on there. Like, one, I love that the Terror Dogs has some practical effects on them. They looked absolutely fantastic, and they didn't just slatter them with CGI. Gozer finally appearing and coming back and then killing Ivo Shandor, even though I would have loved to have seen more of J.K. Simmons, I thought was epic and perfect, and even the way Gozer looked like when one of the Terror Dogs got sucked into the ghost trap, and how she was kind of phasing in and out of reality, really cool effect. But the thing I was not expecting at all, and I was actually super surprised that they did, is they brought in the ghost of Egon, who looked really freaking good, man. Like, I don't know how they created that, if they got an actor that just looks a lot like Harold Ramis, how much they had to pay the estate of Harold Ramis to be able to use his likeness in here. But as soon as you saw Harold Ramis just grab the proton pack with Phoebe's character to blast off Gozer, I started tearing up immediately. Like, even right now, I'm getting a little choked up thinking about it. I thought it was such a beautiful moment. And again, that's all credit to the way they were treating Egon's character throughout the movie, where they were going ahead and insulting him, where you thought he was a nobody father that abandoned his friends and family, only to realize everything he sacrificed and what he was trying to do for them, to then showing up in that final battle. And yes, side note, since I am a Dragon Ball Z fan, I instantly thought about the scene with Gohan and Goku's father fighting off Cell. I know there's got to be other Ghostbuster Dragon Ball Z fans that thought that. I also thought it was such a wise decision not to have Egon's character speak, because then maybe that would have been taking it a step too far. They did exactly what they needed to, with just looking at his former Ghostbuster colleagues all lined up together, blasting off this ghost one more time. Just like, man, that's what we wanted. That's all we wanted, is just to see those 4 Ghostbusters once again defeating a ghost, and we got to see it. Whether they make another movie or not, I don't care. I got to see exactly what I wanted from my childhood, is just those 4 guys doing what they do best. And that was enough for me to just forgive any little mistake in this movie. Now, talking about the post-credit end credit scene. Now, the post-credit scene to me, I think, is a good example that this Ghostbuster movie, I feel, can only really be loved by a lot of the Ghostbuster fans. Because if you were someone who'd never seen a Ghostbuster movie before or weren't that familiar with them, this post-credit scene must have been really disappointing and weird for you. But basically, it was a callback to the first scene in the original Ghostbuster movie when when we first meet Bill Murray's character and find out what he does at the university, where he's performing this electric experiment to see if people can read minds, when really all Venkman's character was doing was zapping the male characters and trying to flirt with the female candidates. So in the post-credit scene, it was the reverse of that, where we get Sigourney Weaver's character coming back in cameo form, which I'm assuming is the only reason this post-credit scene existed. Maybe they couldn't fit Sigourney Weaver's character somewhere in the actual movie, so they were like, we'll just put this post-credit scene and allude to the fact that maybe they're living together and are married or something. So really, that whole post-credit scene is just a wink and nod to true Ghostbuster fans. Other people will just be confused and be like, what was that about? Now, the end credit scene is a little fascinating to me, and I does think hints to the possibility of the future with this franchise, where we get Winston, who we find out is super successful and is in contact with Annie Potts' character, where they're talking about the good old days, about how they started from nowhere working at Ghostbusters. And in this conversation where they're talking about how much Ghostbusters meant to them, it looks like Ernie Hudson's character, Winston, is planning to reopen the Ghostbusters station and start up again the need to have Ghostbusters out in the world, especially also because they show us a tank where they were keeping all the ghosts and the light was blinking, indicating that there are ghosts around. Quick side note though, this is a plot hole within the movie itself, cause whenever Dan Aykroyd's character was talking to Phoebe on the phone, he mentioned that the station is now a Starbucks. But clearly it's not a Starbucks, it's still an abandoned firehouse that Winston, I guess, just repurposed and is about to turn it into a Ghostbuster station. So that was just a kind of weird little thing to have happened. To me, the way I interpret this ending is that if we do get another Ghostbuster movie, it's not necessarily going to revolve around these same characters that we just saw. I don't think the next movie will again be these kid Ghostbusters putting on the proton packs and the suits and looking for ghosts all over town. To me, it feels like this movie closed that chapter, ended off what we knew about the iconic classic Ghostbusters, and the next movie they make, if they get around to doing it, will be that thing that I think a ton of people have been asking for, where they will get 4 brand new adult Ghostbusters to be the new employees of this station. Some ghost event will be happening in town, and maybe Winston and Annie Potts' character will be the only returning legacy characters to kind of mentor them, show them the ropes, and help them defeat another ghost. At least that's the way I interpret it. Maybe Paul Rudd's character can be so fascinated with the ghost fighting he did in this movie that he decides to become a Ghostbuster, and I assume he'll still be together with the Mama Finn Wolfhard and Phoebe, so that's a way to have them be as side characters in the movie. But I feel like that's where they're headed, where it'll be adult Ghostbusters, maybe a mix of male and female, which I think should be the way to do it. You can't just have all male Ghostbusters again. And yeah, you can hate me for saying that, but I feel like that's the best way to go with it, especially story-wise now, because look, I love the Ghostbuster franchise and I really like this movie, but if the next film is just another rehash and is just a bunch of references and nostalgic things to previous Ghostbuster movies, then I think that's where I will get annoyed, and I'm like, look, you're freaking Ghostbusters. Sky's the limit with what story you can tell about demons, hauntings, paranormal activity involving these guys who have to go take care of that. Let's get creative. Let's get original. Tell us a wild story. That's what I would love to see for the future of Ghostbusters, but only time will tell. But I want to hear from you guys now. You've seen Ghostbusters Afterlife. What do you make of the movie? What are some of your favorite moments, your least favorite moments, anything and everything? Be sure to like, subscribe, follow me on Twitter at 3C Films or on TikTok at 3C Films. But as always, I'm Chris. Take care.